Have you recently been running at, like, what feels like absolutely full speed?
Oh, yeah. Everyone is right now.
Right. I mean, that bone-deep exhaustion, the
Yeah.
kind that comes from constantly trying to start new projects, the endless hustle.
Yeah, just the feeling of trying to force things to happen through sheer willpower.
Exactly. So if you are nodding your head right now, or you maybe just letting out a very tired sigh, you are experiencing the exact friction we're dissecting today.
It's a really brutal difference, honestly, between starting a fire and actually keeping it alive.
It is. And our mission in this deep dive is to figure out how to shift from that chaotic burning energy of initiating things to the grounded, quiet power of sustaining them.
Which is, it's a profound shift, and it
Yeah.
really represents a lost art. I mean, we operate in a society that is just completely obsessed with ignition.
Oh, 100%. We love a launch.
We do. We are taught to value the launch, the kickoff, the grand opening. We all want to start the fire, but we are never really taught the mechanics of what it takes to keep it going.
Without, burning the entire house down in the process.
Right, exactly. So today we are going to explore this lost art of pacing oneself.
And to give us a framework for that pacing, we are looking at a really fascinating set of sources today from Tarot by HIC.
That's tarot by hic.net for those listening.
Yep, tarotbyhic.net. And we are specifically looking at the astrology of the day for April 21, 2026.
Which is a really interesting date astrologically.
It is. So the source material provides an astrological forecast about the sun moving into the sign of Taurus. And then it pairs that forecast with a highly allegorical, incredibly vivid piece of writing.
It's called a StoryScope, right?
Yeah, StoryScope.
Yeah.
And this one is titled The Keeper of the Quiet Flame.
The pairing of these two texts is just brilliant because the astrological forecast gives us the structural theory, the psychological and energetic shift that is actually occurring. And then the StoryScope provides the practical application. It grounds this somewhat abstract astrological concept into a narrative that, well, it directly mirrors the burnout so many of us are feeling right now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the astrological shift first, because the text lays out a pretty stark contrast between two very different modes of operating.
It really does. We are transitioning out of Aries season, which dominates the calendar right before this, and stepping into Taurus.
Which runs from April 19th through May 20th. And the source defines Aries as the energy of pure ignition. It's the forward push. Like the text explicitly states, quote, Aries started the fire.
Right. Aries represents the spark. It's almost the biological equivalent of an adrenaline spike. Or, the activation of your sympathetic nervous system.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. It's that initial intense burst of initiating energy required to just break inertia. But then, as the sun moves into Taurus, the operating system fundamentally changes.
The text actually notes, we move from ignition to endurance, from initiation to stabilization.
Right. Taurus poses a much more complex problem. It asks, can we keep it burning without burning ourselves out?
And that specific phrase, can we keep it burning without burning ourselves out? I think that really highlights the difference in mechanism between these two phases.
How so?
Well, think about the explosive energy of launching a new startup versus the mechanics of running a long-term business.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, because the Aries energy is the launch phase. It relies on a massive influx of fuel. You are fueled by caffeine. You are pulling all-nighters to write pitch decks.
The entire team is just operating on pure adrenaline.
And the novelty of a big dream. You are forcing the fire into existence.
You absolutely need that massive thrust of energy to break gravity, to get the rocket off the launch pad.
Okay.
But if you try to maintain that same level of thrust once you are actually in orbit, you tear the ship apart.
Exactly. You just explode.
Right. So the Taurus energy represents the shift into operational systems. It is the daily, often unglamorous grind of actually running a profitable, sustainable business.
Doing payroll, making payroll, fixing software bugs, establishing protocols. It is no longer about generating a massive explosion of effort. It's about calibrating your energy for long-term endurance.
And the source material takes this a step further, too. It links this Taurus endurance directly to the physical body.
Yes, the focus on the physical senses.
Right. It encourages a slower pace, practicality. It specifically asks us to tune into the 5 physical senses, to adopt a style of movement that isn't just about survival, but about finding like sustainable joy over time.
That physical grounding is really the antidote to the cerebral chaos of the Aries launch phase.
Because your brain is just buzzing during a launch.
Right. Instead of living purely in the future, obsessing over the next milestone or the next product drop, Taurus forces you into the present physical reality.
It grounds you.
Exactly. It asks you to evaluate the tangible resources you actually have at your disposal right now.
I do have to push back on this concept of stabilization, though, because the source itself warns of a shadow side to this Taurus energy. It does. It's not all just peaceful gardening.
Right. It outlines a potential resistance to change, like a tendency to cling to situations, people, or surroundings simply because they are familiar and comfortable.
Yeah, that's stubbornness.
So if you are the listener and you are trying to apply this to your career or a relationship, how do you differentiate between healthy stabilization and just being stubbornly trapped in your comfort zone?
What's fascinating here is that the text offers a very sharp tool for making that exact distinction. It comes down to truth versus comfort.
Truth versus comfort. Okay.
Yeah. The way through that shadow side resistance is to relentlessly cut through distractions, excess, and what it calls emotional noise.
Emotional noise.
Because comfort can act like a heavy-weighted blanket on a cold morning.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's so hard to get out of bed.
Exactly. It feels incredibly safe and soothing at first. But if you stay under it all day, your muscles atrophy. You stop moving.
No.
You become trapped by the very thing that was supposed to protect you.
Which means the shadow side is confusing the feeling of being hidden with the feeling of being secure.
Yes, that is exactly it.
Like staying in a job that is destroying your self-worth just because you know the daily routine, or holding on to a relationship that just drains your resources because you are terrified of the unknown.
Right.
That isn't endurance. That is stagnation.
And Taurus demands that you root your decisions in objective truth. It requires sharpening your discernment around very grounded, tangible metrics.
Like what?
Like your actual finances, your physical energy levels, the reality of your relationships. Healthy stabilization is not about being passive or lazy.
It's active.
Extremely active. It is an incredibly deliberate process of building a foundation based on what you truly value, rather than what simply feels easy in the moment.
But deliberate foundation building requires you to quiet your mind enough to recognize what is actually true.
Which is really hard.
It's incredibly hard to do when you are panicked about falling behind or feeling the pressure to constantly do more.
Your brain is just screaming at you to keep initiating, to keep throwing fuel on the fire. And that internal panic perfectly mirrors the exact trap Sānti falls into in the companion piece from the source.
Yes, let's bring Sānti into this.
Yeah.
Because the StoryScope piece, The Keeper of the Quiet Flame, it takes all of this astrological theory and translates it into a very concrete mental model.
That's a beautiful story.
It really is. So the story opens in a valley that has been utterly devastated. The text describes a landscape that once burned with wildfires that devoured whole forests and turned the sky orange.
Just total destruction.
Yeah, and the elders explain that these fires were not natural disasters. They were born from, quote, human hunger, too much wanting, too much haste, too much reaching without rest.
Reaching without rest is just a flawless diagnosis of modern hustle culture.
Isn't it?
We are culturally conditioned to constantly reach for the next dopamine hit, the next promotion, the next arbitrary metric of success.
And we never pause.
Never. We never pause to integrate what we have already achieved. In the context of the story, that unchecked ambition literally incinerated the world.
And the aftermath of that reaching is just ash.
Just ash.
Out of all that devastation, there is only a single ember left, glowing beneath a blackened fig tree. And it is discovered by our protagonist, Sānti.
Sānti is such a relatable character.
He is. The text describes Sānti as a young novice with a mind that moves faster than his breath. He's eager, bright-eyed, and absolutely convinced that awakening is something he can just seize by force.
He is the walking embodiment of that Aries ignition energy.
Yes. Sānti brings this tiny, fragile ember to the abbot of his monastery, fully anticipating a grand, heroic assignment.
His mind is already racing ahead. He wants to build a massive beacon that will illuminate the entire ruined valley.
He wants to be the savior.
Exactly. But the abbot shatters that expectation immediately. He looks at Sānti and says, "This is not a fire for burning. It is a fire for tending."
And the only instruction he gives is to simply keep it alive.
Which is not what Sānti wants to hear.
No, Sānti is deeply disappointed by this. And frankly, I'm going to advocate for the listener here because that disappointment makes total sense.
Oh, absolutely.
In our modern hyper-competitive landscape, if a mentor tells you to just keep a small ember alive, You are going to feel like you are failing.
You're going to feel like you're falling behind.
Right. Sānti looks around and sees the other novices doing what looks like real work. They are chanting, they're debating high philosophy, they are actively seeking out massive world-changing visions.
Loud stuff.
Yeah. If you are sitting in the dirt tending a tiny coal while everyone else is visibly building bonfires of success, aren't you just losing the race? I mean, ambition is how things get built.
This raises an important question, though. The friction you are pointing out is the entire point of the allegory. But we have to look at the environment Sānti is sitting in.
The ruined valley.
Right. Why is he in a ruined monastery surrounded by an ash-covered valley? Because the very ambition you are defending, well, the uncontrolled, desperate desire to constantly build bigger, brighter, and faster, that is the exact mechanism that caused the devastation in the first place.
Oh, wow. So the other novices who are seeking out those massive visions, they are literally repeating the same behavioral loops that burned their ecosystem to the ground.
They are trapped in a cycle of ignition. And Sānti's internal monologue during this time is so fascinating. His mind whispers to him, "This is nothing. You are wasting time. Others are advancing."
We all have that exact same voice in our heads.
Everyone does. It is the voice that punishes us when we are doing the quiet, unglamorous work of sustaining a project.
Rather than launching something new that we can post about on social media.
Exactly. We crave the fireworks display. We resent the daily maintenance.
And Sānti's resentment eventually boils over. He succumbs to that pressure to force immediate, visible growth.
He snaps.
He does. The text details a specific afternoon where he becomes so frustrated with the tiny ember that he gathers a great armful of dry branches and dumps them all onto the coal at once.
It's such a desperate move.
He is determined to force this quiet Taurus endurance phase back into the blazing Aries ignition phase.
But he fundamentally misunderstands the mechanics of what he is working with. To understand why his action is so destructive, we have to look at the literal physics of fire.
Okay, let's break it down.
Combustion requires 3 elements: heat, fuel, and oxygen. When we want to grow something, our instinct is always to obsess over the fuel.
More fuel equals more fire.
We think, I just need to add more effort, more resources, more tasks. But when Sānti dumps that massive armful of branches onto the ember, he completely starves it of oxygen.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text says the fire flares brilliantly for 1 single second, like gold and fierce, and then immediately collapses into thick, choking gray smoke.
The ember is suffocated by the weight of the fuel.
You see this exact same mechanism when people try to care for houseplants.
Oh, the houseplant analogy is perfect.
Right. You buy a plant, you are anxious for it to thrive, and you want to accelerate its growth. So what do?
You water it.
You water it every single day. You think you're giving it life, but physically, you are filling every microscopic air pocket in the soil with water.
You are drowning the roots.
You kill the plant with your own anxious desire for it to be bigger than it currently is.
And that maps perfectly onto human cognitive function and the psychology of burnout.
How so?
When you feel like you are falling behind in your career, your panic response is to take on 5 new projects at once.
Right, you hustle harder.
You dump an armful of tasks onto your plate. You assume the extra effort will spark a massive leap forward in your career. Instead, you rob your executive function of the cognitive bandwidth, the oxygen it needs to process any of it.
So your brain just chokes on the excess.
And you collapse into burnout. The smoke Sānti is coughing on is the physical manifestation of emotional noise.
Wow. But as the smoke clears and Sānti looks at the nearly extinguished coals, the text notes a crucial shift. He feels not anger, but recognition.
He finally gets it.
The failure teaches him the boundary. He stops trying to dictate the pace of the fire and begins to learn what the source calls the quiet language of the fire.
He sits back.
He sits back. He listens to the crackle of the wood and feels the soft breath of heat. He starts adding only what is explicitly needed, precisely when it is needed, and nothing more.
This is the moment the stabilization of Taurus truly takes root. The narrative expands here to show seasons passing. Sānti internalizes what the text beautifully describes as the texture of patience.
The texture of patience.
It is a sensation of feeling heavy, rooted, and incredibly calm. He abandons the search for a blazing beacon and grounds himself entirely in his physical senses.
Just like the Taurus astrology forecast suggested.
Exactly. He notices the dew on the moss, he tracks the subtle shift of light at dusk, he feels the physical warmth of the bowl in his hands.
He is no longer living in the anxious anticipation of the future. He has anchored himself in the present reality of his surroundings.
Right.
He builds a sustainable foundation, not by achieving a massive external victory, but simply by showing up and engaging with the reality in front of him, day after day.
He discovers the profound joy of sustainable movement. But the text does not leave him isolated in this monastic peace forever. It brings the outside world to his doorstep to test this newly acquired wisdom.
Yes, years later, a merchant arrives at the monastery, and the merchant serves as the perfect proxy for the modern listener.
He really does.
He is carrying the exact anxieties that keep us staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. He is frantic, his business is faltering, and he demands immediate answers from Sānti. He's asking, should I expand my business or hold back? Who can I trust? What is the right path?
The merchant is basically drowning in the shadow side of Taurus. He is terrified of losing his familiar comforts, but he's also panicked about missing out on growth.
He's paralyzed.
He is paralyzed by market FOMO, fear of missing out. He sees competitors moving, and he assumes he must match their chaotic energy.
You can almost imagine this merchant staring at a Q3 strategy deck, feeling immense pressure to launch an entirely new product line just because a rival did.
Totally.
And he expects a strategic lecture from Sānti. Instead, Sānti, who is now the master of this quiet flame, simply says, look. He offers a physical demonstration.
Sānti purposely tosses a large bundle of branches onto the fire at once.
Just like he did when he was younger.
Right, and the flame immediately sputters, chokes, and produces a cloud of thick smoke. Then he waits for the smoke to clear, lets the ember settle, and feeds it one small piece of wood at a time. The fire brightens, becoming steady, clear, and warm.
And Sānti follows the demonstration with what I think is the defining thesis of the entire text. He says, not everything that grows is meant to be fed. Not every opportunity is nourishment. Some are only noise.
That line is incredible.
If you are listening to this right now, apply that directly to your own calendar. Think about the side hustle you started 2 years ago that makes you miserable but brings in a tiny bit of extra cash.
Or the toxic client who pays well but just destroys your team's morale.
Right. Think about the social obligations you say yes to purely out of guilt. Just because an opportunity presents itself, or just because a project is technically growing, does not mean you are obligated to keep feeding it.
No, it doesn't.
You are allowed to let certain fires go out.
Discerning the difference between nourishment and noise is the ultimate Taurus superpower. The merchant, absorbing this, asks Sānti a final, desperate question. He says, and what endures?
And Sānti's definition of endurance strips away all the glamorous illusions of success. He replies that what endures is what you can return to each day without strain, what remains when the excitement fades, what asks for care, not force. What asks for care, not force. I love that. If you find yourself constantly having to force a relationship to work or forcing a creative project forward through sheer exhaustion and resentment, it's highly likely that it is not meant to endure.
You are trying to manufacture a blazing fire out of something that is fundamentally incompatible with your current ecosystem. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the story concludes with a quiet exchange between an older Sānti and the ancient abbot.
The one who gave him the ember in the first place.
Exactly. People now travel from all over the valley to seek Sānti's counsel, not because he puts on a spectacle, but because his clarity is undeniable. The abbot sits beside Sānti at twilight and acknowledges that he has done well. Sānti, completely devoid of any ego at this point, simply replies, I have only kept a fire alive.
And the abbot's response completely redefines our cultural understanding of success. He looks at Sānti and says, and what is awakening, if not that?
It dismantles the entire Aries paradigm that Sānti started with. Awakening wasn't the grand, sweeping vision or the massive beacon he wanted to build as a novice. The simple, daily, unglamorous act of keeping the fire alive is the awakening.
Yeah.
The source material leaves us with an incredibly haunting closing thought. It says, not all fires are meant to conquer the darkness. Some are meant to teach us how to remain.
Some are meant to teach us how to remain. When we pull all of these threads together, the astrological transition of the sun into Taurus, the mechanics of oxygen and burnout, and Sānti's journey from anxious reaching to grounded patience, we are left with a very clear directive.
We really are.
We are being asked to audit the fuel we are carrying. True power rarely looks like a continuous fireworks display. True power is found in endurance, in sensory presence, and in the steady cultivation of what actually matters.
It requires a fundamental rewiring of our priorities. I mean, we spend an enormous amount of our lives obsessing over what we need to do next.
Always.
We are constantly searching for new strategies, new habits, and new branches to throw onto our fires to ensure our passions and projects survive. We assume addition is the only path to growth. But based on Sānti's realization in the Burnt Valley, what if the most vital question you can ask yourself today is what you need to stop doing?
Oh, that's good.
Look closely at your life right now. What dry branches of forced ambition, manufactured urgency, or opportunities that are actually just noise are you frantically throwing onto your own quiet flame? You might be the very thing choking it out.
So, if you are currently operating in a state of bone-deep exhaustion, constantly reaching without rest, maybe it is time to drop the armful of branches. Maybe the most productive thing you can do right now is step back, listen to the quiet language of your own life, and simply learn how to remain. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.